Hello, I'm Alex Turk, and you're listening to the Food Systems podcast brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. I had the pleasure of talking to keynote speakers and panelists at the forum in Brussels this year. Here's a flavour of some of their insights and ideas for you to enjoy. Well, Katie McRobert, welcome to the Forum for the Future of Agriculture, now in its 17th year. You are the Executive Director of the Australian Farm Institute. And we had an opening inspirational talk from a former NASA astronaut, Mike Massimino. And Katie, you asked him a question. You asked him about collaboration and overcoming the differences that divide us. He said, use good thoughts first, and that we are all in this together. And much as those are high-level, simplified messages, did they resonate with you?
They resonated very much. We've spent a lot of time in Australia in the past few years talking about sustainability. It's been very difficult to get consensus around what sustainability even means within our industry, let alone when you start talking about different jurisdictions. And for Australian farmers, what people think in other jurisdictions is extremely important because we're very trade-focused in Australian agriculture. We export 73% of the value of what we grow and produce. So it does matter to us what others think and how others operate in their markets. So finding some sort of way to articulate and communicate our shared values on sustainability with others in different jurisdictions who have different values perhaps or different expectations has been quite the challenge. Australia has a relatively mature system of sustainability. We have a lot of commodity-focused frameworks. We have dairy sustainability, beef sustainability framework. We have best management practice programs for sugar and rice and cotton. So these kinds of things have all been coming together for a long time, but even within those Australian perspectives, they speak a very different language and they focus on different outcomes and different priorities. So for us to try and develop an overarching framework that helps describe what all of Australian agriculture looked like, which has been a project run by our National Farmers Federation, which is our advocacy group, but funded by our Department of Agriculture. So you have government and industry working together with a think tank in the middle, trying to pull together all of the evidence. It's been quite the process, and as difficult as it was really good to know that we were coming to this space where we could articulate those shared values that would help us all move forward as an industry. And that's what I really heard from Mike's talk this morning, that he was talking about taking that holistic view, not looking at the little individual things that make us different, but looking at what does draw us together. And one of the phrases I think he used was, it's the mission that matters at the end.
That's what resonated with me too. It's all about the mission, And when you look at the panel you're on today, implementing the transition, I mean, big mission, big issues, complexity of views. What was your message to the forum about the imperatives for green transition?
Well, it really does come back from my perspective to that shared values and the articulation, because Australian farmers don't just farm in a very different geographic situation than they do for their colleagues in the UK or in Europe or in South America. They also farm in a very, very different policy environment. There is no public support for farming in Australia. It's purely market driven. So the idea that there would be a subsidy to help you get through a particular tough time or a particular transition is something that's really Australian farmers don't understand and don't know how to manage. So trying to look for those things that unite us rather than focusing on the differences that do sometimes divide us ideologically is extremely important. So that was my key message, was that we need to find a way to articulate those shared values so that we can then design implementation strategies that are suitable for different jurisdictions, but we're all working for the same goal. We all want sustainable agricultural systems.
And how important is it, particularly when we look at agricultural trade, and you talked about the importance of Australian exports, but trade could potentially be an early casualty of Trump's protectionist doctrine. I mean, that's a concern, a worry, I know, but it probably is a very uniting sort of thought process for what to do.
It is, and that's the flip side of all of this uncertainty and this fluidity we find ourselves in at the moment, is that there is uniting against, in some might say, a common enemy in some ways. More to the point though, trade can be a really good enabler. Good trade policy can be an enabler of sustainable activity in agricultural systems. It can also be a barrier. So sometimes things like carbon border adjustment mechanisms, which are in play in the EU but don't apply to Australian agricultural products, thankfully, they can be non-tariff barriers to trade, and they can actually set up people to fail if they're not designed well, because the problem can be that an Australian farmer can't meet an expectation of a European lawmaker if they don't understand what the different contexts mean. So looking at how good trade policy can be designed to enable sustainable agricultural outcomes is very important, and looking for the opportunities when things are disrupted. That means things change. It doesn't mean things necessarily change for the worse, it means change. So finding opportunities in change is important.
Absolutely, and disruption can promote that. You know, the idea that you can move maybe towards renewables faster, because that is a way to make sure that you protect energy security, for example. And you've talked about unique environments and cultures, and it's such an important point, but of course it probably also adds a layer of complexity to this debate.
Absolutely. The different cultural expectations, even within different parts of Australia, can sometimes be a challenge to manage. The way that livestock is produced in northern Australia compared to a southern grazing system is very, very different. Cropping systems are different in different parts of the country. So then trying to translate those differences, let alone to a different, in European context, you might have cooperative farms that have been turned back over to private, or different scales of farming. And it is hard sometimes to get your head around how all of these differences still lead to food production, and we're all trying to do the same thing. So again, those shared values are where you can try and get some unity in purpose, even if you do things differently along the way.
And so how important is it to come and share a platform, as you have done today at the forum, with other experts and listen to maybe what struck a chord with you from voices in the forum today?
It's a vital opportunity. Australian farmers need to be aware of what's going on in the rest of the world, because it impacts them so directly in terms of being trade exposed. But it's also a great opportunity to learn from different thoughts and different processes. You know, diversity of ideas is what makes us all richer at the end. So from that perspective, I really value listening to the other perspectives that are come from the panellists that I've been with, and other discussions around the rooms, other chances to make new connections and new networks. And quite heartened to hear, I must say, about the shift in policy perspectives from a lot of our European colleagues, where perhaps 5 years ago there was a lot more talk about prescribed practices which are not easily transferable to different systems, that there is that shift now towards more of an outcomes-focused approach, which is certainly more inclusive of different cultures and environments, as you said earlier. So it's great to hear that, and it's also nice to be able to share some of the Australian experience with these colleagues too.
Well, thank you very much for doing that, Katie, and enjoy the rest of the forum.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another edition of the Food Systems Podcast, brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Please join us again next time.